Ladies and gentlemen, it is Monday, April 14th, which means we are officially in WrestleMania week, which means WrestleMania is a mere 5 days away, kicking off with WrestleMania Saturday and then followed by WrestleMania Sunday. And I cannot wait to see what unfolds through this entire week, but not just with WWE, AEW as well. What's going on, everybody? Travis Fowler, Harkrider, is back this week with a new episode of Tights and Turnbuckles. Let's get right into some professional wrestling talk with the weekly high spots. And honestly, this whole episode is going to kind of be a mixture of talking about what went on this past week on the show as well as what's coming up. And we might go into a little bit of my feelings towards WrestleMania this year, because on some instances, I agree with what I've seen online, and on others, I think we actually might be in store for some fun stuff. So let's just go ahead and talk about the weekly high spots before we get into any Mania talk. By the way, if you are new to this show, again, I'm Travis Fowler, Harkrider, and this is Tights and Turnbuckles. I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you like what you hear. If so, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and then go and follow us on all of our social media pages, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. I think this week we might have a little bit of fun on the TikTok because it's been a while since I've uploaded anything there. Admittedly, I've been bad about it. But with it being WrestleMania week, I think it would be a lot of fun to talk about Mania all the way up until then, and maybe some extra stuff. So keep your eyes peeled on TikTok this week. Should be a fun week ahead. Anyway, back to our weekly high spots. I know I've said that 3 times now, but I've just been so excited about wrestling this past week because there was so much good stuff. Starting off with Monday Night Raw, I want to talk about the official triple threat women's world title match. I talked to a buddy of mine yesterday, and I gotta say, I still think this is one of those matches that I said earlier about WrestleMania having some matches that I think will be fun, but there are others that I feel like I wish they were just a little bit different. This is one of the ones I think was a little bit different is what I'd go for, because I'm really not a fan of the triple threat, and it has nothing to do with Io Sky being bad or anything like that. I know she's a fantastic worker as well as the other two, but I strongly feel the money match was Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, and they should have just stuck with that, but that's not what we're getting. This past Monday, they made it official. It'll be Io Sky defending the women's world title against both Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, and it happened exactly as I said it would. Like I said last week, I had a feeling that there was going to be a DQ finish that would have caused them to do the contract signing this past week, which all happened and made the triple threat official, so now we've got it. And I honestly think that this might be the catapult for a Bianca heel turn if she wins, because I could totally see something happening where Bianca does something underhanded in the match, even though there's no DQ. I can see her kind of doing an about face, and I can see her playing the victim type character, thinking she's done nothing wrong, but at the same time, she totally did. So it'll be interesting to see how they carry that out come WrestleMania this upcoming weekend. But nevertheless, we move forward with Jey Uso's promo, who I gotta say, Monday Night Raw as a whole had a lot of talking this week, and I don't mean talking as in just promo work, because there were matches, obviously, but this was a very promo-heavy show, all leading towards Mania. Jey Uso's promo is a clear example of that, because this was the promo that I think has finally shown he is in a serious mood now going into Mania. We talked about the whole Jimmy beatdown and how I wasn't really a fan of how everything played out, but it is what it is. This week, they counter it with, hey, Jay's pissed. Let's go ahead and get him to that level, and I think it has actually worked. Has this Mania build been everything that we were hoping for? Absolutely not. Is it a little bit of a disappointment that he's not in a main event? Sure, but at the same time, the winner of the Rumble gets a title shot, and yes, I know they talk about main eventing WrestleMania all the time, but this is unfortunately just one of those things where the feud just wasn't matching the main event status. No offense to either guy, it wasn't, and that's what it simply comes down to. But I think it will be a fun match overall. Gunther and Jay, I think, will end up surprising a lot of people. I'm not going to say it's going to be the best match of their night, but I do think it will be surprising, and overall, I think they will deliver at least a very good match that will have people surprised by the end of it, no matter who walks out the winner. But The promo that Seth Rollins gave to Paul Heyman and that whole back and forth, that promo actually has me excited for the triple threat. And I mean the triple threat of Rollins, Punk, and Reigns. I was not looking forward to it really at all. I didn't see the point in it. There's nothing on the line. There's no title. There seem to be no stakes. There still technically is no stakes. However, Seth's promo brought up a lot of good points about Paul Heyman and his tribal chief, as well as his best friend CM Punk. A lot of things that Rollins pointed out were very good. So it's like, he makes some good points here and there, and then he could have stomped Heyman, but he chose not to, and we saw Seth say at the end, "Now you owe me." Could we be looking at the next Paul Heyman guy in Seth Rollins? Very interesting going into the main event of WrestleMania Night 1. Gotta say, Seth has completely gotten my intrigue level to a new high for this triple threat match, one that it had not gotten to up to that point. But now, Paul Heyman is an interesting factor. He was saying he won't betray either Reigns nor Punk because one's his best friend, one is his tribal chief. But now, does he owe Rollins that favor? Who knows? Who knows what he's going to do? That's what's making it intriguing. So I actually am looking forward to seeing how they pull this match off now that Heyman looks to be quite the factor going into that matchup. Over on NXT, there really wasn't a whole lot that I really got to say more about NXT. They're still doing everything to lead up to Stand and Deliver. They've got the Women's North American title ladder match getting wrapped up for the participants. We had 2 more participants added this past week, and we'll get the final 2 this upcoming week. We'll talk about the Stand and Deliver ladder match later on this week. That might be a fun TikTok that I put out in regards to some predictions. We'll talk about how the podcast is going to be affected due to Mania this upcoming weekend. But moving forward, I gotta say, I liked how Stephanie Vaquer chose the Fatal 4-Way for the NXT Women's title. I like that Julia is actually being taken in a bit of a different direction, and reportedly, it's because Vaquer was getting over a lot easier and quicker than Julia, of all things. So I am very interested to see this Fatal 4-Way with Stephanie defending her title against Julia, Jordynne Grace, and Jada Parker. Should be a fun contest between all 4. Jada Parker is really starting to come into her own as a performer, both on camera with charisma as well as in-ring ability. She's got herself set for some easy movesets that actually look really good for her character, and it just works completely. Jordynne Grace is a juggernaut that I've always enjoyed watching, as well as Stephanie and Julia, both showcasing how well of participants they are in those ropes, bringing their strong style as well as their Mexican lucha libre influence to NXT. I can't wait to see that Fatal 4-Way coming up at Stand and Deliver. Over on Smackdown, we saw Bayley and Lyra Valkyria pick up the win in the tag team gauntlet to determine the number 1 contenders for the women's tag titles against Liv and Raquel. I don't think there's really anything to this match. I don't see Bayley and Lyra winning. I think this is just setting up for Bayley to turn on Lyra and them go into a program for Monday Night Raw and the Women's Intercontinental title. This is one of those matches on Mania that I really wish would have gone in a different direction. We don't know exactly what happened when Alexa Bliss returned. Everything looked like it was actually unfolding quite well with her joining the Wyatt Six. And then all of a sudden she's just disappeared with no kind of explanation. The Wyatt Six still haven't been seen either. And I was really hoping that we were going to get Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross teaming back up together, since there's already a history established with them as tag team champions, much the same as Liv and Raquel have. I think that would have been the better route to go. Maybe that is what was planned and something has derailed it for the time being, but hopefully we get to see that sooner rather than later. On that one, I'm really not, again, looking for anything special there. As a matter of fact, I think the champions retain in that matchup. Just my personal opinion. Also on the show, we saw a little mix-up with Chelsea Green and Zelina Vega. The 10 count was administered, and the referees have always been taught from a certain point to now, hey, you got to call it as a shoot. So if somebody doesn't get back in the ring for a count out or lift their shoulders for a pin, then count it down. And that's exactly what happened. Minute and a half, Chelsea gets counted out. officially loses the match by countout to Zelina Vega in something that was not supposed to happen. So I'm thinking we're going to get some kind of payoff for that either this upcoming week on Smackdown, or maybe they add something to the Mania card. We shall see. There's plenty of time between now and Saturday, so who knows what goes on between now and then. They've also been teasing Randy Orton's match being against Solo Sikoa. Not really looking forward to that. I have already discussed who my 3 picks would be, and Solo's not any one of those. I really hope that's not the route they go, and unfortunately, it's just because I don't see a lot of big things right now for Solo. I feel like at the moment, he doesn't have that quality to face Orton right now. A friend of mine actually still thinks that maybe this is a setup for Kevin Owens to make some kind of surprise return, and the neck injury is just part of the storyline. I don't think that's the case. I really do think he is injured, but I do see where my friend was coming from, so we will see what goes on. It could be something that's revealed to us on WrestleMania night. So who knows what goes on with there? Could there be another opponent? Is this just part of the story? We shall see. And before anybody thinks I'm being insensitive on that, my friend brought up a good point. In this day and age of social media, the best way to fool the fans is to mess with their expectations. So we're expecting somebody different besides Kevin Owens. But what if we know that they are thinking this way? What if that is how they try to fool people? Because again, in this day and age, that's the best way to mess with people, is mess a little bit with the kayfabe and find out, do people still really buy into this? I mean, it worked with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes with the attack in the parking lot, which was a Triple H idea that worked out very well between Cody and Kevin. So maybe this is what you do, is you got to mess a little bit with people's emotions in order for them to buy into it, with social media being what it is this day and age. They tried that same tactic with Tiffany and Charlotte this past week. Charlotte attacking Tiffany before the show, caught on a social media cam. They also had their own cameras for later on in the show. And, I still think the match is going to be good, but I don't think the feud has lived up to what I think the match is going to be. I think this is going to be a case of the match is better than the overall feud. And that's simply because it just isn't what we expected. And I think there may have been some miscasting between Flair and Stratton. And I don't know if that's necessarily anybody's fault. I don't even know if that's creative's fault. I think they may have felt it could go one way, but they should have maybe gone another. Either way, it's not what we thought, but I still believe the match is going to deliver. I hope any kind of personal animosity can be put aside for them to put out a banger, because I feel like they can, especially with what we saw between Stratton and Perez this past week, showing what they have done down in NXT. Even apart and together, I feel like we are in for a great matchup still, so I hope I'm not proven wrong in that thought. Finally, Cody doing another promo where he talks about the prestige of the WWE title by showing its multiple incarnations. It was really cool to see all the history right there in the ring. I don't know about this whole match, man. Part of me really feels like Cody is going to pick up the win, but a lot of things are setting up to feel like John Cena pulls off the big win and gets his 17th title. So it's very interesting going into Mania this week as to what happens, and John Cena is reportedly scheduled to be on the final Smackdown before WrestleMania, so a lot can happen, and I'm very much interested to see what they pull off. So let's just sit back in this next week, and for WrestleMania, maybe we do see John Cena make history as the 17th World Championship might be coming around his waist. But moving over to AEW, I got to say, the Dynamite episode this past week, while I didn't think it was bad per se coming out of Dynasty, nobody was really talking about Dynasty in a positive way necessarily, but it all had to do with the longevity of the show, as well as some of the matches felt like more of a filler as opposed to something that should be on a pay-per-view. And then the ending very much spoiled some people's appetite, but then of course the antics that took place after the pay-per-view really had some sour taste in people's mouths, mine included. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But Dynamite really kind of felt like they were going in more of a story element this past week. Like it felt like they were really utilizing more, and I'm not trying to say they were or trying to be lower than kind of thing, but it felt like they were kind of going more of a WWE-esque promo heavy type of feeling this week. They still had some good matches on there, but like a $400,000 8-man tag match, nobody really cared about that. Like I didn't personally. I think it was a throwaway match. What was the point? You're going to give these guys each $100,000 for winning? Like we already know they make good money over there. So what do they need $100,000 for? And what in the world does that have to do with anything going on? Not a thing. So I can't really speak for the overall show. It just felt a little jumbled in some places. The Hurt Syndicate MJF stuff, I really think MJF is setting up to bring in his own faction, potentially guys from MLW. Even though Hammerstone looks to have made some sort of contract deal with his former home MLW, where he did team with MJF as well as another member. They created a group called the Dynasty. Don't know if we'll see them in AEW, but it kind of feels like they're setting up with that. And if so, it would make a lot of sense because his real life girlfriend, Alicia Tout, who he happened to call a skank this past week on a promo. Very funny in my opinion, but it ruffled some people the wrong way. It would be interesting because she is and was their manager there, so she could pull off the managerial duties, especially if they do get the other two guys over there. Now you've got your Dynasty faction led by MJF going against the Hurt Syndicate with Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and for now, MVP could be that other physical body, but in just a few short days, really, I think about another month and a half, so about 30, maybe 45 days, Cedric Alexander is going to be available, so I really think we could see the Hurt Syndicate, the original Hurt Syndicate, all four members back together would be a lot of fun, and it would be a great way to have a trios rivalry with MJF leading his group, Bobby Lashley, Benjamin, and Alexander being on the other side. Could be a lot of fun. So we'll just see what goes on with this storyline. I just know at the end of the day, I don't want MJF in the Hurt Syndicate, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. So we'll let the story play out and see how this ends up going. Speaking of promos, and honestly, a pretty good long, I would honestly call it one huge segment, even though there was two matches involved. The opening match with Jon Moxley and Shibata was actually pretty decent. It was a lot shorter than what I anticipated, but it still was a fun matchup. That led into the Bucks coming out after Moxley picked up his win. Mox dipped out. Bucks delivered the promo talking about maybe aligning with the Death Riders and showing how the Elite and the Death Riders can work, even though the Elite right now hasn't been mentioned in about 6 months. And where's Jack Perry in that instance? Does he come back into the fold? I'd love to know some of these answers, but I guess we still got to wait for that. But out of that promo came Omega talking about how he thinks the Bucks are pretty much POSs and how they screwed over Swerve, which that then brought Swerve out to try to get to the Bucks for screwing him at Dynasty. And then that brought out Pac, who became his opponent and was scheduled to face him in the night anyway. And then during that matchup, Pac ended up getting hurt. Swerve picking up the win in what I believe was going to go a little bit longer in a matchup. Unfortunately, had to cut short due to injury. I hope Pac makes a full recovery. Overall, that one long drawn-out segment from match to match was actually pretty fun. It's hard for me right now to look at Swerve in the same light as I did prior to Dynasty because of his comments. Again, I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But overall, I still think Swerve is a big-time player for them. I may not agree with some of his personal antics or his opinions, whatever you want to call him, but needless to say, the guy still is a great in-ring performer, minus his Swerve Stomp. I think that's the most ridiculous finisher I've seen in quite some time. I've made my feelings about that known very well, but that's just one opinion, and I know my opinion is just like a butthole. Everybody's got one, so it is what it is. Moving forward, though, the Trios title match that is set to take place with the challenge of the Ops being accepted by the Death Riders. Pac obviously is not going to be involved in that. Moxley stepping in as the interim Trios champion along with Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli. They will take on the Ops this upcoming week on Dynamite for those Trios titles. And that That whole Dynamite show coming up this week looks really fun, honestly. There's a lot that I'm interested in. The trios match, honestly, would be the one that I'm least interested in, but there is continuation of the Owen Hart tournament, with one of those matches being a match that many have been waiting to see, and I kind of wish it wouldn't be in the tournament, and I wish it would have been on its own, because I think there's a huge story that you can build to Double or Nothing between these two, and maybe they still face each other. We'll see, but I think if anything, it'll be left for maybe All In Texas, depending on who wins that tournament. But we get to see it anyway. Athena versus Mercedes Moné this upcoming week for the Owen Hart tournament semifinal match. Cannot wait to watch that. It is going to be in Boston with Spring Breakthrough, as they're celebrating being the longest running wrestling show in prime time. Yes, that's a dig at WCW, Nitro, as well as Thunder. It is what it is, but even though I'm not a fan of them trying to kind of rub it in that face, it's still a great thing that AEW has been around as long as they have, and has been an alternative, because any alternative to just having WWE has been wonderful. So I love the fact that this has gone on. And when I say I love it, I love that we have this alternative. I love that we've got so much more wrestling than what we used to have. And this week's episode not only is treating us to that matchup that I'm looking forward to, but another Owen Hart matchup with Hangman Page against the Wild Card. Who's the Wild Card going to be? My opinion, Josh Alexander's picking that spot. I will almost bet my money and house on it if people want to. Not really. I'm not betting my house. But I actually do believe we're going to see Josh Alexander fill in that wildcard spot. It is rumored that he had signed with AEW. This would be a great way to get him introduced to the AEW audience. Does he pick up the win? We shall see, but I think that's who's going to fill the wild card spot. Overall, Dynamite actually looks to be a really fun episode this week, so I look forward to seeing it. But speaking of a fun show, I saw where Sean Ross Sapp said that Collision overall had been a really fun show over these last few weeks. And being that there were a few matches that were on the show that kind of got my intrigue, I saw one that was making the internet rounds. Billy Starks and Jamie Hayter. I almost said Athena. Hayter and Starks having a banger match really got me interested to see how this ended up going. And they were not wrong. The match was solid. It made me actually start watching the rest of Collision, which ended up being really good. A promo from FTR that set up a match with Cool Hand Ange and Daddy Magic. They utterly destroyed them along with Danny Garcia after the match. Their whole reasoning for attacking Cope was actually really fun as well. There was also a very fun match between Kevin Knight and AR Fox. Very fun match between those two. I was highly entertained by that. And Kevin Knight, I could see why he got his WWE tryout, and maybe it'll show that he could have done good things over there, but I think AEW is a great fit for him right now. He has definitely come a lot further than what he was at when he was in TNA and I first saw him over there. He is now taking on the Jet persona. I love his UFO frog splash, and he and AR Fox just really did tear it up in that matchup. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. I promise you will enjoy it. Athena picking up her win to go on in the Owen Hart tournament, and then Takeshita picking up the win over Brody King, which sets up another big match for this week's Dynamite. Will Ospreay and Takeshita, that'll be fun. Again, loaded Dynamite show, but that Collision show really was fun. I have to admit, as somebody who's not a regular watcher, I did enjoy Collision. I might actually tune in the coming weeks to see what they do, because yeah, I was impressed. I liked the show. So I might be tuning into Collision more regularly after I enjoyed that episode. Another thing I did not enjoy, though, was the announcement that Joe Hendry may be legitimately injured and have to take time away with a rotator cuff. He did announce on TNA Impact this week that he is still going to defend his TNA title, which, by the way, I agree with, was something I saw online. That TNA championship is one of the most beautiful titles in rotation as of today, and I gotta say, the triple threat between him, Frankie Kazarian, and Ethan Page will be a lot of fun at Rebellion, and I'm already going to call it now. If he is indeed really injured, I'm picking Kazarian to pick up the win and the TNA championship in that three-way. But now, let's wrap this up with some of the controversial news that took place this week. and it had to deal with Swerve's comments made after the AEW Dynasty pay-per-view. I'm not going to go into the full story as it was talked about for most of this week up until about Dynamite Wednesday night. Swerve going out and basically saying for his own entertainment, F Booker T. And I'll make it short and very sweet. There was a story that Booker told on his podcast saying that he confronted Swerve to his face at a convention just recently. I think about a week prior to Dynasty, maybe just a little bit longer than that. But basically, he confronted him with his thoughts. And the reason why this bothers me so much, at least from a comment perspective from Swerve, is if he really felt this way, did he say this to Booker's face when he had an opportunity? Because if he didn't, I have to say it's a bit of a punk move to not do. If you're willing to go out and say it in front of thousands of people, most of which had already left the building, so we had very minimal fans, but there was a video camera that caught it. And if he truly felt that and meant what he said, but didn't have the nerve to say it to Booker's face, it's a Punk move. Just the same way I felt after Punk's promo about the whole brawl out situation where he originally made the statement, if you've got a problem with me, come find me and let's effing go. The Bucks and Omega seemingly answered that, and according to some reports, as I stated back when that happened, it sounded like Punk was trying not to fight them, but hey, you called people out to say, hey, if you want to fight, come fight me, and they did. And Booker confronting Swerve had that same feel. If he confronts you and had some words that you didn't like, you could have said exactly what you said to his face, but you didn't. So again, if that's really how he feels, you should have done it to his face, and it makes me think of you a little bit less as a person. Again, as a character, I know that he is a great in-ring competitor, and I think he's going to still do wonders for AEW. Maybe just on the personal front, though, I question a little bit of his integrity to say these things away from somebody when he had an opportunity to say it straight to their face. But again, that's my 2 cents on it, and that's where we're going to end today's episode. What were your feelings on the whole Booker T Swerve situation? Do you agree with Swerve, or do you take Booker's side? Let me know in those comments down below. Also, let me know, are you looking forward to WrestleMania this upcoming week? Because I personally think there are some things to look forward to. Again, keep your eye on our TikTok channel as we'll talk about some Mania stuff throughout the week. Let me know in your comments down below what match you think may even steal the night, both nights of Mania, this upcoming weekend in those comments below. And let's talk anything professional wrestling. As I say, I love talking with you guys about pro wrestling on this show. Make sure you're following us on all of our social medias. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and following us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. I'll come back not next week, since it is Mania week and we've got 2 nights. I want to save any Mania talk for after the show. So we will do a new edition of Tights and Turnbuckles, not next weekend, but the following weekend after WrestleMania has wrapped. And I know we'll have a lot to talk about because we'll have the week leading up to Mania and the week after Mania. Lots to discuss, I'm sure, for both AEW and WWE. But until then, I hope you guys have a great WrestleMania week and you enjoy WrestleMania this Saturday and Sunday. So take care, God bless, and y'all just continue to love pro wrestling.